Hello friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and what we have coming up this weekend is, of course, another eclipse in this spring eclipse season. They come twice a year, the eclipse seasons, and with the full moon and the new moon. So we're going to be looking at some more coming up in the fall, still with the Taurus-Scorpio axis. So that's what's happening in an overview. And we want to take a look at the chart so we can get a better idea what's going on, more specific. So let's do that. Here we go. Here we go with the eclipse chart. And as usual, we're not using the ascendant, the actual ascendant, but we are using an artificial Aries ascendant and whole sign houses so that we can show no matter where you are in the world, it'll be the same. The particular rising for the West Coast is this 8-degree mark of Sagittarius. But we don't particularly want to look at these aspects because here I can change that. Go into the preferences on the TimePassages software, aspect options, and we don't want the rising and the MC to be included. So that will be better. So taking a look at this, it's a very, very interesting chart. What we have is the 25 degrees of Taurus and of Scorpio opposite, of course close to the south and the north node in the case of the sun, the south node in the case of the moon, which is the indication for an eclipse, right? You have the geometry in your mind. I'm not sure how much we should go into all that detail, but basically the nodes are where the plane of the ecliptic is crossed by the moon's orbit, which is slightly above or below it. And the ascending node, which is the north node, is when it's on its way up above that ecliptic plane to the north, going south opposite. So that what you have is you have a line of 180 degrees apart crossing the plane of the ecliptic, which is the Earth's orbit around the sun. And so when they line up in that way, they're lined up in both in terms of longitude, which is the zodiacal degree, and in terms of also the latitude or the x direction, which, this should be about the same. We have 19 degrees, 18 minutes, and we have in the minus direction, and we have 19 degrees and 5 minutes, so it's close, same degree. They're called a contraparallel. Anyway, enough about the mechanics of the eclipse, but we know that eclipses are actually very powerful lunations that are said to last 6 months in their effects. So this is kind of where the whole summer is going to be, all the way to the fall. And interestingly, what we have is we have another very strong eclipse condition here. The previous full moon, which was not an eclipse, actually was close to a T-square to Pluto. And this eclipse full moon is a T-square very close to Saturn. You can see that Saturn is almost 25 degrees within 4 minutes of a perfect square to these guys, the sun and the moon, the eclipse sun and the eclipse moon. So we have quite an interesting, you would say with Saturn limitations. You would say with Saturn also concentration, emphasis, getting serious, taking things not lightly but rather very seriously, and that is a good idea for this time. A great many things are in process and flux, both in our individual lives as well as in our social lives. We know that things between the different attitudes about conservative versus progressive in this country are heating up. The vast chasm between those two, kind of indicated in the past couple of years by the square, which is now kind of defunct, between Saturn and Uranus. This has widened to almost 10 degrees here. But nonetheless, it comes back pretty close toward the end of the year. And we're going to look at that too. It's the November 8th eclipse that's also of interest, and it's also along the Scorpio Taurus axis the other way around, where the sun is in Scorpio at that point, you see, and the moon would be opposite in Taurus. So that's another very important T-square that's coming up. But in this eclipse, it's interesting to note that we have the T-square to Saturn. We have as well a sextile and a trine to this lovely Mars-Neptune conjunction in Pisces, which means what about our action orientation? Very mystically oriented right now with Neptune, subject to deception as well with Neptune. You can be upset for the wrong reason and not realize it. I mean, that's always the case. But maybe that's emphasized right now, that there can be illusions about what we're supposed to be up to. There can also be a direct connection with activity in the direction of the inner realms, to the inside, taking action in a way that is actually looks more like a meditation, or it might be dream action. Dreams would be emphasized at this time. You're likely to have very strong dreams during this eclipse, during this timing, the weekend of the eclipse. The eclipse takes place on Sunday at 9 p.m. Pacific time, but that 9 p.m. turns into early morning on the Monday morning as you get further east, like the east coast of the U.S., and then Europe would be, of course, early morning there. Around midnight on the east coast, and then Europe would be another 5 hours or 6 hours beyond that. So this is a very interesting eclipse. If you're on the west coast and you're at 9:14 p.m., you can see it very conveniently if the skies are clear where you are. You can see the moon turn red, dusky red. And besides the position of Neptune at 24 Pisces, we will also want to note the position of Eris at 24 Aries. So this eclipse is actually lighting up all these outer planet combinations. It's a little bit off of the trine and sextile to Pluto, but it's not too far off. We do have that about 3 degrees as well. And then, interestingly, we have the perfect square as well between Pluto at 28 Capricorn and the new planet Haumea at 28 of Libra. So we should talk about these new planets a little bit, I think. So when we have a strong position of Eris in an eclipse configuration like this, and it's only a semi-sextile and an inconjunct from the moon, semi-sextile from the sun, but yet it still gets addressed, it gets hit, and it is parallel to Jupiter as well. So what do we have with a strong position in Aries, of course, of Eris? Eris is in Aries from 1920 up to 2040, so it's going to be in the sign of Aries for a while. It's the furthest out in its eccentric orbit, which means that it's going very slowly at that point, at that distance. And what we do have is a notion that we need to take action, but of a particular kind. And with, of course, additionally, we have Saturn and Neptune chiming in. So we need to and Pluto for that matter. So we need to take action of a very specific kind, which really corresponds to our own soul intention. And there's action and there's action. There's things you can do just based on a whim. There's things you can do based on, you have these compulsions to get money perhaps, to get a better position at your job, to get it over on somebody. There's for all kinds of actions. But the ones that really count are the ones you take for what you might consider your higher purpose, or who you really are, your soul intention. Can be distinguished from other more superficial personality situations, which we also have. I mean, we have bodies which we have to feed, and that's why we have to eat every day. And that's why we have to sleep every day. We have also the ego, which has to be fed in its own way every day. But yet, beyond that, we have soul personalities as well, which is really getting to the heart of who we are. Pluto has always been identified with the soul in evolutionary astrology, particularly from Jeff Green, famously. And, Eris is of the same position in the solar system. It's way, way, way out there, beyond Pluto even. So it does go to depth within the psyche, and that's what all the research has been indicating. It just keeps coming in and coming in and coming in. That all these people that really have a soul intention to go beyond, paradigm shifters, the feminists of the last couple of hundred years, all have strong Eris in their charts. You can tell it's somebody that kind of goes to the beat of their own drum, that really is kind of settled in themselves, artists, great artists, people that make an impact, make a difference by what they can bring, what they uniquely bring. And everybody has it within them. Everybody has the chance to do that, to articulate and to act on only their deepest principles, what they really, really, really cannot not do. And when you find that, you find your purpose in life, which is very important. It gives meaning to your life, which is very important. And it's a satisfaction, but it does take effort, and it does take discrimination, and it takes sifting. It takes sifting out what is superficial and not important, and only responding to, and those things the things that are unimportant could be things like from early conditioning. You were told to do things a certain way as a small child, and it sticks, and you can't let go of that. Or it could be from early wounding as well, that inhibits your actions sometimes. But if you get beyond all that and you come to what is your own true belief, what is your own deepest principle that you must adhere to, and really act upon that, that's when Eris is really involved. And that's what this eclipse is calling forth from us, to be involved in our own personal evolution in a way that really satisfies our soul intention. And then it does bring, you see, Neptune in. It does bring Mars in, because they're making an angle here. They're making a semi-sextile 30-degree angle. It's a sextile to Saturn, which is, again, the serious commitment. And Pluto is about understanding that there are things that we have to let go of in order to get to this place, that there's a transformation that has to take place within us so that we can really aspire and, make it, manage it, get there to what we really want to be, to our most authentic self. We really have to try for that, and we're encouraged to try for that in this eclipse season and in this entire year because of the eclipses that are coming down. So something to think about also with this is the transformation indicated by Pluto of our own inner moral compass, indicated by Haumea, which also refers to profound connection to nature, but it's philosophically profound connection to nature also means connecting to natural law, connecting to our natural selves, perennial wisdom, who we really are, how we recognize what's right and what's not right. And we all know, a lot of times even the most seriously deranged actors out there, bad actors out there, they really know. We know what's right and what's not right. It's just a question of having the courage to do it and having the will, having the intention to do what's right. And that's also a factor in this whole thing with strong Haumea opposite Eris, as it has been for a couple of years now. And in this case, partile square and almost to the minute with Pluto. So that's kind of what we got going here. It's a pretty strong recipe. We have a couple other things to note. One is, of course, that Mercury's retrograde. Mercury turned retrograde on the 10th, so only 5 days ago. And it's actually going to get all the way back to zero just as the Sun crosses into Gemini on the 21st. So that'll be a very interesting time. Also, when the Sun and Mercury are together, as Mercury's retrograde, it's a strong time of the retrograde period. Maybe a shift in what you're thinking about, what you're believing, what you're interested in, what you can articulate, because Gemini, right? And then also, we just need to note, as well with this 0 degrees here, also Jupiter is at 0 degrees of Aries now, just having crossed into Aries. So that's going to be a factor to amplifying the Mercury retrograde, especially on the 21st when the Sun comes in. And then we have, in this configuration, this eclipse configuration, we do have a pretty strong position also of Chiron. Chiron is at 14 degrees, almost 15, less than a degree from Venus, indicating that our relationships may be showing us our wounded parts, which they do anyway, but this is an emphasis on that. With Uranus at 15 degrees as well, it's a 30-degree aspect here. We may find surprising revelations. They may have to do with inner wounding. They may have to do with healing. It may be sometimes you can really make progress by means of epiphany when you recognize something. All of a sudden the light bulb goes off, right? The light dawns, and you find something that's been missing from the way you look at things, and therefore missing from the way you act, and then things go in a different direction. That can happen. So we have to be alert for those possibilities of change taking place in our lives, meaningful, productive change. And then before we close, I'd like to look at the coming eclipse in November, which, as I was referring to before in the fall eclipses, it's also the same Scorpio Taurus axis. And here we have the November eclipse, which is a full moon in Taurus. And this is a fascinating eclipse. For one thing, it's on November 8th, which is Election Day, 6 a.m. On the East Coast, when the polls open in Washington, D.C. on Election Day. This is cast for San Francisco, but it would be 6 a.m. if you were doing it for Washington, D.C. And then 16 degrees, this is, of Scorpio and of Taurus, with the moon at exactly the same degree as Uranus. Uranus in Taurus, retrograding back a little bit. Let's see its next station. It would be stationary. Oh, look at that. Also, Uranus has a ton of parallels with all the other planets. And it is going to be finally going back to 14 degrees of Taurus by January, mid-January of 2023. That's only a couple of months away from this November eclipse. Anyway, the really amazing thing about this eclipse is not so much the fact that it's partile conjunct Uranus and almost partile conjunct also Mercury, which is almost at 16 degrees here. But the whole thing makes a T-square to Saturn. Saturn has moved backwards, now it's moving forward again. Let's see, when is its station? Yes, I think it had just begun moving forward again around the end of October. So this is very slowly moving, but it is going in the forward direction again. And look at that T-square, it's so close. This is 2 degrees here away from Uranus and the eclipse sun and moon degrees both. And we still have, actually Haumea is now at 29 degrees, but Pluto has been retrograding and now it's starting back again too, but forward again. So it's not quite as close with this square, but it's still part of the whole scenery. And it is important to note that now, by the way, Jupiter has moved back into Pisces. It was a little bit in Aries, and then it starts back. It went to its retrograde cycle. That current as of November, would be that on the 23rd, so a couple of weeks later, is when it's going to station at that point in Pisces, and then after that it'll be in Aries. Once it regains Aries, it'll be in Aries then. So anyway, that's kind of what's happening around the background of this, but just to recognize, that T-square between the conservative impulse represented by Saturn and the progressive impulse represented by Uranus, and it's on election day. You can only imagine how strong that is going to be, how strong the divisions between left and right are going to be by that time, and of course that's really shaping up right now as well. So really that's about what I had to show you. This is the eclipse that preceded these two eclipses of this season, April 30th and also May 15th, which is the one that's coming up this weekend. This November 8th one, again, it's going to be very powerful, very strong. And here's the one that's coming up just immediately soon. So let's transition back. And, we just want to say, as we always do, offer a little encouragement and not to take it too hard if things don't go your way. Try to get the 100-year perspective. I love that. Somebody once said, well, think about, is it going to matter in 100 years? Because there are things, actually, that will matter in 100 years, and we should be focused on that more. And try to see what we can do to help the society emerge from its dark places, which it's been in, forever. I mean, human nature has its dark side, and so does society, and we are struggling for the light, individually and also societally. And it was kind of a taste of it in the 60s, I think, when we got the idea that maybe there could be peace, love, and harmony. Maybe we could live with a society founded on kindness and taking care of each other. And nothing wrong with that concept. It's just hard to get it to come out in actuality, So that's what we're about as a group, as a society, as a species, to try to do the best we can, take care of the earth, take care of the environment, turn the climate change around somehow. But it just takes the will of all of us, and then great things can happen. And every individual is like a single drop of water in the ocean, contributing, and the vibrations go out from your every action. They influence others. It's like a hologram. Each part reflects the whole, and each part influences the whole. And so you're really powerful. That's the message. You can really be powerful and do amazing things for yourself and for this life. And you can look back with satisfaction when you get ready to leave the planet before you come back again. Anyway, it's all good. It's all perfect in its own way. But it takes care. And it takes constant effort and constant really keeping our eye on the prize and working toward the best that we can be and the best that the society can become. If we can only, all of us, every human, do their job, do their work. So best of luck with that, and best of luck with this eclipse coming up. And we'll see you next time. Bye, friends.